Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
Title this show, Everything You Need to Know About Fraud Today But Have Been Afraid to Ask. And then start with this fact, fraud is big and is getting bigger. That's the worrisome message delivered by Rene Perez, a fraud expert with Jack Henry, and seconded by Stephanie Ziegler, Director of Financial Investigations at SELCO, a $2.8 billion credit union headquartered in Oregon. Perez is on the show to discuss Jack Henry's new financial crimes defender tool, and Ziegler and SELCO are early adopters. She tells why. Much of the show is devoted to discussing trends in financial institution fraud, and the criminals keep getting slicker and more sophisticated. Credit unions can and are successfully fighting back, but a key realization is accepting that the fraud tactics keep changing. Nowadays, for instance, a huge problem, said Perez, is that criminal organizations are seeking to implant crooked employees in financial institutions and fintechs. Perez and Ziegler discussed their organization's defenses against this. Another mushrooming trend, account takeovers are epidemic. Bottom line reality, fraud is an immense problem for all credit unions. What you don't know can indeed hurt you. Listen up. Hey, so Rene, you're going to tell me how to rob a credit union, huh?
That's the type of training you're doing today?
Certainly what I'm hoping to hear, I mean, tell me how to foil the Jack Henry Defender. That's my thing, man.
That's awesome, man.
Well, I'm disappointed that you're not going to tell me how to make off a bank robbery.
How to break something.
All that's going to do is just make my job even harder. That's not the point.
So we're convened here because Jack Henry has a new tool, and Stephanie is going to sing the praises or condemn it, as the case may be. I'm waiting to do a show where a credit union guest has been brought on, and I'm thinking they're here to rave about the product, but they're just going to tear it apart. I'm waiting for this. This day is going to come, I promise you. Rene, is this your day where this happens? Go, Stephanie.
No, Stephanie's one of my favorites. So,
it's rigged.
We've been working together for a long time, but Rene knows what you get from me is always honesty.
Yes, 100%.
So, Rene, why don't you start? Tell us about Jack Henry's Defender, why this is the best thing since sliced bread, and how many credit unions are using it, and why? What are they switching to use it? Switching from to use it?
Okay, so our financial crimes defender product, Jack Henry, we have about 68 credit unions that are on the platform today, give or take 5 or 6 that are on the platform today. We have about 100 more that are under contract, that are going to go through the install queue to come through it. It is our platform that we built from the ground up. It's a platform that is built to become real time. So it has all the underpinnings to become a real time solution. We're working with all the data providers and to start getting transactions in a real time perspective so that we can make the decision. That is something in the industry that legacy products are working towards, because most of the products in the industry today grew up as BSA products, right? So they have some technical issues in processing real time compared to processing next day. A lot of products, and even our legacy product in Yellowhammer, you could get closer and closer and closer to real time, but to get to real time, you run into technology issues to truly get into real time. But it is a combined solution. It's built natively into our technology modernization platforms and is part of our technology modernization process that we're going through at Jack Henry. Has fraud, money laundering capabilities all throughout the platform. There is AI and machine learning that is available through the platform as well. I think the other question was we got customers moving from manual processes, moving from Abrigo, Verifin, Nice Actimize, and then some smaller homegrown type of systems.
Is this system essentially fully automated? Because I've heard credit unions complain about compliance for years now. And it always boils down to they're doing a lot of it manually, which I would
Yeah.
complain about too, if I were forced to do it. Because the machine ought to be able to figure this out. Not and maybe not 100% of the time, but 98% of the time. It's
Yeah.
so
And
would your product give me 98% automation?
we're still building it. We're still new, but yes, that's the goal. And I'll give you an example of something that's coming just so you can kind of get a feel. So something that we're releasing in May, it's been tested internally. I'm releasing May, takes the SAR process from the narrative process that can take anywhere between 2 and 8 hours, depending on how in depth your case is, down to 5 to 10 minutes because we've automated it with AI that will look at the alerts, look at the cases, look at all the notes that are on there, and then build based on all the stuff that's in the system. They'll build the first narrative for you as an institution. And then you can then, as an institution, read through it, add anything, change anything you want, go through that process. And then SAR automation will allow them to read the first version of it and then literally just tweak it, or they can use it like a prompt and sit there and go, I need you to find the address to John Doe's grocery store, Mesa, Arizona. And it will go find John Doe's grocery store in Mesa, Arizona, and plug in the address into the SAR. So it has a combination of both of those. So that's the kind of things that we're heading towards. And there's some other kind of AIs that we're doing to automate more and more. I wouldn't say it's fully automated today, but with the tool and how it's built, it allows us to build all these things really quickly.
I've never asked this question before, which shocks me that it never occurred to me to ask. What's to stop a criminal organization from buying this platform from you? Yeah. So in other words, I'm a criminal
Yeah.
and I Microsoft uploads a new patch for Windows. Man, I'm
Yep.
going to get it before anybody else. I mean,
Yep.
this is my goal because I'm going to figure out how to thwart that damn thing. It's And maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I'm sure that's exactly what they do. So if I'm a criminal, I hear this and I say, this is great, man. If I can get this software, I can probably figure out how to trick it.
Yeah. So you get that. So nobody can buy it other than one of our institutions that we have a relationship with. So we can control it from that perspective. But from an industry perspective, what we're seeing across the fintech world is a lot of threat actors, either countries or organizations, are trying to implant criminals in organizations as employees. So we're seeing an uptick in that where
Wow.
a fintech, we interview somebody, we interview them several times because most fintechs have gone completely remote. And then at that point in time, you hire them, they come in, and now they're acting like an employee, but they're really just trying to get access and steal and figure out things that are within your institution. So that's a threat vector, but it's not specifically designed for this system. Now, what fraudsters do is that they do communicate and sit there and they've tested limits from different institutions, and then they can try to find out what products those institutions are using. So they can sit there and go, XYZ product is at this bank and their ACH limit for detection is $5,000. So they will let other criminals that are close to them know That institution has a $5,000 ACH limit, keep everything below that. They can't get access to the system, but by testing the system and stuff, they're able to tell some things from a high level, especially if they're on older rules-based systems.
Right. So, Stephanie, why did your credit union want to jump on this? And Oregon, I've been to Oregon. I think the people in Oregon are probably some of the most honest citizens in America. So you can't really have much problem with fraud. I mean, I think you must have a barrier keeping Californians out, something like that. But
we do have a lot of lovely people here, but that also means that, they're very honest, kind, trusting people that people want to take advantage of. So we have just as much fraud as anywhere else, unfortunately.
But what attracted you to this particular system? What itch were you trying to scratch?
We picked Defender for a couple different reasons. One, we are longtime Jack Henry clients. We have very good working relationships with them across a variety of products and services. And so we were interested in seeing how this vision was going to be executed. We were really coming from a development stage in our fraud and BSA processes where those were being done on separate teams by different individuals with different levels of understanding of everything felt together and in a lot of different systems, some manual processes, some automated processes. And we were really looking for something that is going to give us a holistic case management type of view from a fraud event start to finish, right? And that's as we've worked with Jack Henry to help develop the things that we want to see in this product and really kind of hone in on what like a dream of it would be. Like that would be my end goal. Like my perfect state would be something where we could have something go all the way from the teller, through an operations team, through my team, off to a collector or a legal team if necessary, and have that all be in one holistic environment and really give us that oversight of the fraud universe and the organization in a way that's going to create a lot more efficiencies and allow us to stop fraud a lot faster. So the vision of that came from Jack Henry and their development of Defender is really something that resonated with us. And, Rene mentioned earlier that a lot of these legacy systems are BSA first. And that was always our experience that, on the BSA side, we had a great time detecting things, but on the fraud side, it was a lot harder. And so this gives us that dual capability to be able to integrate those things and respond faster.
Fraud is trickier, harder, isn't it, than BSA? BSA seems fairly mechanical to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I do think that it is. Fraud obviously changes so much faster than BSA does. We can have a lot of different components, and more you're seeing that fraud and BSA space kind of merge. You have to take anti-AML into consideration when you're talking about fraud because it's not just single channel fraud anymore. So you can have, a fraud event that starts with a phishing text message and then leads to an account takeover that leads to wire fraud. And that's one event that traditionally you would look at as three different things. And now it's a much more complex case and more than likely is going to have enough activity that is going to trigger a BSA obligation for filing and reporting. And so you need to be able to have access to that information in a way that you can respond accurately and quickly to a single event while having that oversight of understanding the full event that's occurred and how there might be fraud or BSA implications outside of what that individual transaction tells you.
I talked a few days ago with an Apple customer service rep who didn't know he was talking to a journalist, but life's like that sometimes. And he told me that they were being bombarded by account takeover attempts that it had really vaulted up. And are you seeing something similar?
Account takeover is absolutely like the number one thing right now. And we all know that digital fraud and digital banking are the way of the future, right? Everything is moving to faster payments, to, more immediate access. And so because of that, your account takeover is the prime opportunity to get to as many accounts, as much funds as possible, as quickly as possible. And so, yeah, we see that it's a regular occurrence that people are trying to social engineer members. Everybody has seen those text messages that come out with links to log into a fake site that harvests credentials. But we're also kind of seeing that lead to, more traditional types of fraud that you wouldn't necessarily expect because everyone has this focus on the digital channel. Account takeovers are where it's at right now. But if your focus is there and if your controls are primarily there, that leaves you open to maybe more of your manipulatable channels where, there are people involved, whether that's branch transactions or phone, social engineering of your member. So then you see fraud kind of move away from the focus back into these more traditional channels because people aren't necessarily paying attention there. And if you see fraud there, if you don't have that full scope of data, you might not realize that check fraud or that weird large cash transaction your BSA team caught was the result of an account takeover where they weren't able to move the funds digitally. And so they moved to something more analog. And so that's why you really have to be able to have that holistic viewpoint of what's happening to your membership to really understand where your common points of compromise are.
How often do you encounter BSA? I ask because if I were a criminal, I'd be pretty aware of this law, and it's easy to avoid it. It's not at one institution. I mean, you have to split up where you're depositing your funds.
The hardest part for the criminal is getting the funds into the financial sector. So once they get it into the financial sector, then they start moving it from bank to bank, credit union to credit union. And that's the BSA. So the fraud is to stop the money from coming into the financial institution to start out with. And then the BSA is to find it once it's there and being moved from place to place from that perspective. And they're getting better at it. And what's interesting is, and I love the show, but I've talked to criminals about it, and it's what inspired them is the Netflix show Ozark, right? And Jason Bateman's character and how he was able to money launder for the cartel in that show, and they made it look glamorous. And you'd be surprised of how many people utilize that show. And again, I love it because it's about our industry and what we do and catch, and it's pretty realistic. It's a big component of the entire cycle. I actually was talking yesterday, the last 2 days at our strategic initiatives conference for Jack Henry. And what we talked about is really financial crimes as a whole right now. You have to have your BSA and AML. All right. So let me go this other way. It starts a lot of times in the cybersecurity side, right? Information getting stolen, people authenticating into your platforms and getting into the online accounts. Once they do, then sending the money, then comes the fraud, sending the money, moving the money, creating the money, and then it goes to the BSA of moving it from institution to institution and getting that out. So it really is, you're starting to see this convergence from a financial crimes perspective that the BSA, the fraud, and even the cybersecurity teams need to be connected at the hip and share intelligence, even just internally. And then we need to do more from an industry perspective as well.
I completely agree with that. And in the system that I oversee for my credit union, my investigators also are our BSA team. They file their own SARs because they're the ones who are working in those investigations. And what you see now is, because you're right, like BSA really hasn't changed. It's easy to Google. It's out there for everyone. If you know what you're doing, you know how to research it and find out, what the parameters are and what people are looking for. And so that leads to the fraud because a scammer is going to try and use somebody else to mule their money instead of laundering it through their own accounts because that's harder to detect. They're going to move to different channels of access that don't fit those traditional detection types because muddying the water is exactly what BSA and money laundering is trying to do. The more you can convince somebody that they're receiving a payment from someone who doesn't exist, and then they're going to send that money to somebody else, creates that money laundering chain via the scam, via the account takeover. And so BSA and fraud really are intertwined a lot more now, because the explosion of fraud and access in a digital way allows you to try and circumvent the BSA more. That's why your teams really need to understand both, to make sure that you're still detecting what people are trying to hide and not just making assumptions that this is a one-time fraud transaction, when a lot of times it's really part of a bigger scheme. Or if you don't have that really strong BSA education behind your fraud detection, then a team on the front line or an operations team, someone who may not be in the BSA day to day, might not realize the compliance obligation you have around that one fraud transaction that happened. Maybe that's a high dollar amount. And, then you're setting yourself up for a different type of risk. So you really have to have that integration and that education with all of your team members to understand the threats that are happening now.
How many SARS does your institution file daily?
We average probably anywhere from 30 to 50 in a
A
month.
day? Oh, a month. And what's their nature? I mean, are these accidents? Someone's just gone through some piggy banks and now they have $12,000 in quarters. I mean, is it that sort of thing?
It's all different kinds of activity. We monitor really holistically. So it can be fraud based, it can be your traditional money laundering, it can be things like elder abuse. And, there's so many different ways now that even when I look at the reports that I send out, it used to be that we had, 10 or 12 normal categories. And now it seems like we're adding a couple new categories every year as new things come up. And, certainly cyber attacks has been a new thing that we have to report on and kind of classify in different ways. And so that field of what we're reporting on is always expanding.
So, Rene, how are you faring in the AI wars? Because you do something, and then the other guys know AI too, so they combat this with their own thing.
Oh yeah, and that's the back and forth. All right, so I'll give you an example. I gave on stage yesterday. We're doing things from an AI perspective to identify the patterns and being able to tell the patterns of certain types of transactions are the typical behavior of a fraudster, right? If they've logged into their online account, how did they get there? Did they come through a new browser? Did they come from the application that they've always come from? How did they authenticate? Did they use a saved username and password on that device, or did they actually type it in, or did they use a biometric to get into it? And then what they've been doing within the system itself, within the online banking system, right? We're creatures of habits. So like if you were to pull my profile, you would see that I typically log into my online banking account between 7 and 8 every single morning. I look at my checking account. I do some things like that. Pretty simple, and I log out. But if I'm in there and I'm starting to change payees and I'm starting to change or add new payees and I'm checking and looking at every single account that I have linked to my online profile, that's a little bit different. And you got to use AI because you can't monitor all this by yourself. And with a human person doing that, you got to have the AI to be able to look through all that data and say, wait a minute, this is a pattern. This person is not doing what they typically do within the account. So we attack it that way because we have to see what patterns we see, what we're looking at, what is normal for that particular customer, and then what's abnormal to then sit there and go, hey, this is a potential fraud. So we look at it from a detection perspective. Now, what fraudsters do with AI is they look at how they can get more efficient. So something that's happened over the last 3 or 4 months now, and to one of your earlier points that with your conversation with Apple, is we've seen the first totally autonomous account takeover. So from the point that the person gets the text message, responds, has a conversation, all with a bot. The bot then gets their username and password, gets their one time token. The bot uses AI to log in to determine what type of online system they're using. So then it can go through it and say, this is how you add a new payee. This is how you do this. Add the new payee, send the money out, and not a human touched it the entire time. So that's the kind of cat and mouse game that we have to play, in that we just see that. Now, how can we go out and build something to determine that? So that's where, like, one of our other products of Intercept, which we're about to release, is really around the bot analysis, the telemetry of how the person is logging into the system, so that we can catch that type of totally automated type of fraud. So it's a cat and mouse like that.
So Stephanie, what's the impact on staffing in your implementation of the Jack Henry Defender?
Defender really didn't change the way I needed to staff my team. It was more about how we needed to specialize my team. So we work on a decentralized fraud model. So we have teams around our organization that are responsible for various parts of like the fraud life cycle and processing disputes and things like that. So we were able to bring another team in, get them using the platform specifically around faster payments and Zelle, which is good because that's kind of been the start of our, one location for everything fraud cycle. We're able to see the alerts that they're seeing, how they decision them, what their notes are. That leads into any cases that they may need to refer to my team. And so it's really been a little bit more about efficiency. And then I have a team member that specializes on the BSA side and a team member that specializes on the fraud side. And they're able to see the alerts for both. It kind of gives us a more holistic idea of, what's being picked up between the two models and do those fit together into a bigger profile. So we haven't had to add anyone to the team for that, but we did move into some specialization.
Going back to a point that Rene made some time ago, do you have any employees who are off-site, any remote employees?
I do manage a hybrid team, yes.
Are they all in the United States?
Yes.
How do you know they're not part-time criminals, to go back to Rene's thing? I'm not pleased. I'm not throwing rotten bananas at your credit union's employees. Rene, this is Rene's question. I didn't even ask it.
No, it's a completely fair question, and it's something that you have to take into consideration. I mean, in the fraud world in general, synthetic identities can lead to synthetic employees, right? You think that you've onboarded someone, you think that they're, a legitimate asset to your organization, and then you find out that it's, all been a very long plan or a long con for them. In my case, I have met and hired all of my employees face to face, and they've moved after the fact. So I am confident they are all 100% above board. And that is something we actually take into consideration with our hiring. We do have a hybrid workforce. That's just the way the industry has gone since COVID, especially with BSA teams who value that confidentiality and just being able to keep that information from being disseminated out. But we tend to stick to pretty local hiring for that aspect of it.
Well, there are probably some criminals in Oregon. I don't know. Maybe not.
You made it sound pretty good, so I'm not sure.
So same process from a Jack Henry perspective as well. When we hire, we have to, one of the interviews has to be a face-to-face going forward. So you'll find quickly the state actors and some of those criminals, they don't want to go face to face.
Well, hold on a second. Now,
all right.
If I'm organizing this operation,
yeah,
I'm going to have one person, probably a female actually, who will do all the face-to-face interviews with 30 different names, all of them.
Yep.
She's going to go from Kansas City to Detroit to Los Angeles to Portland, Oregon. Because she's great at interviews, really honest person. You meet her, you think, man, how can I not hire her? and someone else is going to do the work. So, I mean, that's hard to guard against, isn't it?
It is, but even so, all our interviews are on camera, so we're going to see that person, and we're gonna challenge that person in their online interview, all right, in the virtual interview, and then when we bring them into person here, we're gonna see them, and we're gonna continue to interview, for developers. We're gonna throw some development up on the whiteboard, and we're gonna develop. We're going to see what their background is, and then you're going to validate all the information that they gave you, who they are, where they're from, their citizenship, what those documents are, and it's the combination of all of that and getting the real detailed scrutiny. Fraudsters are creatures of least resistance. So when you start putting them through that multiple type of gauntlet around them, they'll usually step out because it's too hard, too long, and they want to go in and out faster. You don't have very often that will go all the way through the physical interview, and then we find out then it's they're not who they say they are. So we've actually changed a lot of our hiring processes because of these type of threat actors that are out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you might know the answer to this question. Can you use AI to search LinkedIn? And my question is this photograph associated with more than one identity?
Yeah, I mean,
Because I always go to, if I'm talking to someone new, I often check LinkedIn, not because I'm suspicious about them, where'd they go to school, background stuff. Just,
yeah,
yeah, and it's the fastest way to get that information.
you'd be
But
surprised.
I'm fascinated. I bet you there are cases where a particular picture is used by more than one person.
Oh, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
presentation where I had a lady on Facebook that was in this travel group, and she was conning people out of $2,500 to $5,000, setting up vacations, down payments to vacations. And if you literally took that picture and you dropped it into a Google image search, anybody would have easily found out that that picture that she was using was actually a German influencer. So yeah, you can all the times. So one of two things either happen, right? Or one of three things. You put a picture in the Google search and it comes back and it's who they are and who they say they are. And there's LinkedIn, there's articles from them when they were younger and all sorts of things. That, or number two, it comes back with nothing. That's your other suspicious that they don't really exist. Or they come back to a Facebook page with like 3 followers and 6 people following. And that's just somebody who created a fake picture, AI picture. Or number three, that like the situation I just told you, it comes back to somebody else. I mean, you can tell those multiple names, multiple different people, because they do reuse some of those pictures, unfortunately, or fortunate for us.
Yeah, you see the same thing with synthetic identities. Unfortunately, like sometimes they don't pay that much attention, but that works out on our end because when you see the same picture 5 times, it's easy to have that pattern recognition.
Oh yeah.
How
Or
would you see the picture 5 times?
Like
I
when
mean,
you're going through your
what would you do?
identification process. So if you're asking for ID for a transaction or ID to open an account, and that's the third time you've seen that photo, Rene has taught some interesting classes that I've attended on showing like similar backgrounds for things and how you can, AI is so much a part of that now that you can manipulate different aspects of a photo to make it more widely usable. And why make 10 images when you can make one and just change one small detail? And so that's something we see a lot, where a lot of times it's more about the quantity of what they can push out than the quality, which works out on our end because then we can detect it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this rise in criminal employees, if you will. When you said that, I remembered it must have been 15 years ago. The FBI circulated a memo saying that California financial institutions were being penetrated by a Mexican organized crime group, LAMI, and and that these were honest people who were related to LAMI members, blah, 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 which made it hard. They didn't have a criminal record. These were nice, upstanding people, sort of. I don't know where that ended, but it got my attention at the time. I said, "Well, this is a nasty wrinkle here." And
Yeah.
what you're talking about is even nastier.
Yep.
So I don't
Well,
know how well institutions, credit unions are guarding against that because credit unions, they're funny people. They're trusting. It's, they're good people. They trust themselves. They trust each other, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes the trust is misplaced.
yeah. You'll see that a lot of your credit unions are all in the same boat that synthetic IDs are what we have to watch out for. I mean, it's the reason that fraud has exploded the way it has. In 2019, the fraud loss in the United States was about 19 billion. And if you look at the Federal Trade Commission just released this year's estimation, and they estimated fraud loss at 196 billion in the United States. The emphasis of this, what some people call a fraudemic, is all around these fake people and these fake IDs because prior to 2019, that's when everybody was getting those emails that said you had a rich uncle that passed away and left you $10,000 and you got to pay $2,500 in taxes, right? So the fraudsters had to find victim number one to steal their money, and then they had to find victim number two to move that money and get it into the financial system. So what fraudsters figured out during the pandemic, doing the same process, is they started creating fake unemployment claims, and then they figured out how easy that was. Well, then all that is faking documents and creating people, and then turning in an unemployment record. And from that point on, what had a monumental shift of fraud in that the fraudster no longer needed victim number two. What they needed to do is build all these fake accounts within our financial system. So now when they defraud victim number one, they have a place to send the money. They no longer have to take a haircut on that money with victim number two. They keep the $2,500 that the person was supposed to keep to start out with, and then they move the money throughout the system. And because of that, and because that is a core foundation of what fraud is today, they synthetic IDs is everywhere, and they know to look for it. I know our Jack Henry clients that attend anything that I've ever presented know about them and are looking for them, and I've given out queries and things that they can run on their core system just to find the not the most sophisticated ones, but the most common type. So they can find 60-70% of the fake ID or the synthetic accounts at their institutions using 3 queries. When you get to the higher profile ones, those are the hardest ones to catch, though, and those are the ones that move also the most money.
What do you mean higher profile?
All right, so the 3 queries are real easy. Different names using the same phone number, same social security number, or same email address. Right. So I can have 16 different names, but they're all using the same email address or using the same phone number, right? Because it's all going back to the one fraudster. Now, that's like the people that are just getting into fraud, the people that are not masters at the craft, that's 60% of them. So you can find those using those 3 queries. Now, the really good and mature fraudsters, they have a different email address, a different phone number, and a different TIN for every single one of their fake accounts out there. And they, instead of just managing one profile on their side, like some of the beginners, they're able to manage 200, 300 profiles, all with different emails, different TINs, different people's names and everything. But then on their side, still keep it organized where they know that this account number or this name or this phone number or this email is associated with this profile. And that's where you get to the real complex people and the people that do this more for a living than just doing something on the side.
Yeah, what I find unsettling about really well concocted synthetic identities is these are very long cons usually. So the account opens up and it's a small amount of activity, but that's not necessarily abnormal. And years go by, no problems. Everything clears. Regular little deposits, occasionally a small withdrawal. It's lovely. Not making any money on this account, but it's fine. It's no big deal. And then suddenly hell breaks loose.
And the good ones, they'll open the account with $25,000 and they will make a $5,000 and $10,000 look normal, right?
Mhm.
And so they make the larger amounts because they know to do that. And again, it goes to the beginners versus advanced. The beginners would start with the smaller amounts and then work their way up. But yeah, synthetic IDs is a long-term game. All right. So you're creating synthetic IDs now and accounts in that now that you're going to use 3 and 6 months from now.
Mhm.
And then the cycle just continues and continues and continues.
And that
Okay.
really leads to like the need for diligence and the need for education, because you can't rely on everything being a control around a brand new account. They'll beat you out. Like that's just not something that is
Well,
really
credit unions have a problem, which is opening an account often has a lot of obstacles. And those accounts often don't open because you say, to hell with this, I'm going to Chase. They'll take my damn money. I'll have an account today, which you will. I guarantee you, as long as you're more or less legitimate. Where a credit union is going to say, as they've often said to me, oh, you have to come in. I have to do what? I have to come in to open an account? Really? Yeah, I opened an account with Chase 15 years ago online exclusively, and they put money in the account for me opening the account.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it's a balance for sure. I mean, moving to online account opening, moving into offering of more digital products, that's essential for any credit union strategically. You have to be able to offer what is out there in the industry and what people want. And that speed, that time for them to be able to access the funds and establish a new relationship is critical. And we don't always have the resources that you do have at those larger institutions. And so you really have to make sure that you're dedicating the resources you do have to the right things, making sure that people are trained and engaged on how to really detect those synthetic identities, the accounts that, potentially maybe look a little weird, but you're not quite sure. Those are the things that make it hard in that account opening process, because you want to make sure that you are offering a good suite of services that can be accessed quickly for the members you're trying to bring in. But people who are trying to commit that identity theft and create those synthetic accounts, they're not going after, people who look like they have a bad banking history. They're wanting to present you with a great banking history so that they can get that access faster. And so that's a constant like line that you have to walk and really evaluate where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and what controls you can put in place to allow you to offer those things faster. Because that's really the ultimate goal, is being able to have the best member experience possible while protecting them and your organization as a whole.
okay, last question. This is for you, Stephanie.
Okay.
I'm an evil person. And I take this podcast and I synthesize Renee's voice. And it's Renee's voice. I synthesize it. It's right there. I always say anybody, there's 500 podcasts of mine. Anybody can synthesize my voice, but I don't want mine. I want his. He calls you up and says, big problem, Defender, it's been hacked. I need to send you this patch and you need to get it installed right now. Right now. Why wouldn't that work? Because it's a bad patch. I mean, it's going to steal every penny out of the $2 billion credit union.
Well, in your specific scenario, Renee probably knows that I am not the person to come to about a patch. Like I am not your tech person.
Well, let's just pretend you are.
Absolutely. That's a thing that happens, right? You get business email compromises, you get people that, impersonations are huge in the fraud world right now for really any major company or institution. That's happening. That comes down to education. You have to make sure that your people, because those are the weakest link in a process like that, right? They have to know what to do in their scenarios. Does it make sense that Rene is asking me to do a patch on something he knows I know very little about? Does the inherent urgency of his message want me to make a decision that I wouldn't normally make, right? Fraudsters use that all the time with this, like, this patch is going to ruin something. You're going to lose a lot of money. They do the same thing with your members. If you don't respond to this text right away, there's a warrant out for your arrest. That heightened sense of urgency is used to confuse and scare people into making choices they otherwise wouldn't. And so you have to be able to recognize that and take a step back and say, does this make sense for the situation? Does the request make sense? And then you have to train your people, both your members and your team members, to know that, like, if the request doesn't make sense, call Rene back. Call Rene at the number I call Rene on every time. Mm-hmm. Is this really your request? Mm-hmm. Have dual controls so that not just one person is the one saying, oh yeah, we need to send this huge payment because Rene told me to. Have a second set of eyes on that to know that that's out of the norm. That social engineering piece and that impersonation piece is the biggest link I see right now in being able to stop fraud or having, potentially large losses, because if they can convince you that what they're saying is true, you're going to give them the keys to the kingdom. And so having your people educated, having your members educated, that any sort of urgent question, anything that's normally not in your wheelhouse, those are things to stop and take a step back and not be panicked that you don't know how to solve it, but to think about whether or not you even should. That's really the number one piece of advice I could give to anybody, employee or member trying to stop fraud, is really take a step back and look at the situation before responding.
Yeah.
So
Robert, criminals they'll send you something that looks like an official document from the IRS or from SELCO or whatever. And I remember talking with a very competent computer guy, and he told me he'd gotten a text message on his phone. He had just awakened. He was making coffee, didn't have any coffee yet. He looked at his phone, something from his bank account. And they needed his PIN. I typed it in, sent it. And then after he had 3 sips of his coffee, he said, "What the hell did I just do?"
Yep.
Yep.
And he managed to intercept it before there was any damage done. But it took a couple sips of coffee to get the brain working.
Absolutely.
And if he could fall for that, anybody could fall for it.
Something for you, this is personal, because I do get attacked all the time because of who I am. And so, your voice is out there and stuff with all the interviews and stuff you've done. My family has a password, and it's an easy password that can be put in, one word that can be put in any kind of conversation. And so I've had my daughter call me before on my number and say that she's in trouble and all of this stuff, and I hang up, because while she's telling me all this, she doesn't tell me the password. So I know it's somebody who's trying to attack me. So that's just it. If I ever get asked about impersonations about me specifically and stuff, that's something we do as a family, and it's a simple password. It's a simple word that.
All you got to do is like Groucho Marx, just say duck.
Yes. Exactly right.
No, that's brilliant, because I've known old people who have gotten phone calls from grandchildren.
Yes.
And
very common.
Who needed to get money cards from Walmart or something like that.
Yeah.
Why they were asking for this specific instrument, I have no idea. But these poor people it's in the middle of the night, and they go to a 24-hour Walmart, half asleep, buy some money cards, transfer them. And then next day they realize it wasn't their grandkid, unfortunately. Yep. So if they just had some word like duck, they would have hopefully if their brains were working, they would have realized this was just a scam. Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions. What can they do to really, really, really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey again, and that's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.